We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
My fellow Americans, tonight I'd like to talk with you about immigration.
They are not our friend, believe me. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems.
Viva Mexico! Becky G is lashing out at Donald Trump after his recent Mexican immigrant comments with a few fiery words of her own.
We see conflicts of Mexican immigration today on the television and in news articles and witness the never-ending debates it brings forth. Though Mexican immigration may sound as something that has just happened recently, in reality it started long before today. The first major wave of Mexican migration to Chicago began in the mid to late 1910s. It spurred on the economic, social, and political displacement of the Mexican Revolutionary years and in the rise of industrial and agricultural employment in the United States. The Rosero program initially was what created a wave of migration due to the fact that it helped Mexicans temporarily find a job to replace those Americans at war. With all the other immigration waves that came before them from all around the world at this point, the Mexican immigration became a minority.
Due to the increased migration into the city, immigration acts were placed upon Mexicans and many other cultures to stop the flow of overpopulation. The Immigration Act of 1924 regulations set by Congress restricted ethnicities from entering the country. This quota provided immigration visas to 2% of the total number of people of each nationality in the United States. The Immigration Act led to a hard life for ethnicities like Mexicans due to the freedom struggle of being allowed to work and stay in the country for a long period of time. These struggles led up to Mexican immigrants making their own movements early on to get rights like the Chicano movement. The Chicano movement was a Mexican-American movement focused on being an extension of a civil rights movement for restriction liberation. The wave of Mexican immigration has also played an economy role early on which helped the city strive in various ways such as jobs, financial status, and the growth of the city. Immigration caused more job stabilization to occur which enhanced the financial status for our state and therefore expanded our city, Chicago, into a larger icon and higher status in not only the state but the country. Immigration of Mexicans helped fill the labor force in the city. We can see that 50% of America's labor force between the 1990s was because of immigrants, which of course included Mexican immigrants. Various shops and restaurants from the 1910s till now have opened and helped the economy and flourished culture. These businesses not only help the city economically, but also help grow the city culturally. We see that tortilla shops and restaurants, markets, and bodegas, and several local newspapers like Mexico renamed El Nacional in 1930 and El Dial. These were just some of the first ways we saw Mexican immigrants make an exchange to the new city that they have encountered.
Chicago is one of the most diverse cities of this nation due to the generations of immigrants who have made it their home for such a long period of time. Mexicans have filled the city's history and to this day continue to attract those from Michoacán, Zacatecas, Guerrero, Jalisco, Guanajuato, and many other states. Immigration reforms, policies, advocates, and community groups have played an essential role in the development of Chicago's Mexican community. These organizations for Mexican immigration have adapted to changing times. No longer are they interested in country of origin concerns. Many over time have been representing the interests of Mexican immigrants and have been engaging and participating in such community-changing organizations in Chicago. The impact has become the rich legacy of immigration-related activism and community-based organizations. The participation received by immigrants of Mexican origin is at its peak, gradually reshaping Chicago's culture. A way to see of this changing culture is that now many organizations, Catholic Charities of Chicago, the Immigration and Naturalization Services in Chicago's office being one amongst many, has been checking the adjustment status of immigrants, doing processes, taking actions for children such as the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals known as DACA, taking actions for parents of U.S. citizens such as the Deferred Action for Parents of Americans on Lawful Permanent Residents known as DAPA, employment authorization, family-based petitions, naturalization and/or citizenship, Temporary Protected Status (TPS), U Visas, Violence Against Women Act known as VAWA, petitions, and legal assistance. Also in the way that the government is funding many of these organizations not just for legal assistance but for education as well, such as the DREAM Act that affects students who grew up in the United States and have graduated from high schools, but their future is limited due to the current immigration laws. Under current law, their immigration status solely comes from their parents, and if their parents are undocumented or have immigration issues, most have no right to obtain legal residency. even if they have lived most of their lives in the US.
There is a lot of variety of music in Mexican culture. Some popular genres are cumbia, bachata, banda, mariachi, norteña, and tamborazo. Another popular genre is folclórico. When there is celebrations, gatherings, or other events, the music cannot be missed. There is always music present and people enjoying it. Some Mexican restaurants in Chicago might even have live Mexican music. For example, if you were to go to Las Palmas Mexican restaurant in Chicago, you could even be serenaded by this wonderful music. Not only can you hear Mexican music live, but also in radio stations and events. For example, La Ley 107.9, they are well known and portray great Mexican music that people enjoy. Also, parades like El Cinco de Mayo, Fiestas Patrias, and Mexican Independence Day are wonderful ways to enjoy Mexican music and culture.
As Mexican immigrants and Mexican Americans keep growing in Chicago, so do the communities they live in. Mexicans live in communities mostly in the south side of Chicago, but with the construction of the University of Illinois in Chicago, those living in the west side areas moved south to the 18th Street and Pilsen. This also led to expansions to the 26th Street, which is known very well as La Villita. La Villita is one of the largest Latino neighborhoods in Chicago and the biggest Mexican community in the city. These expansions not only stayed in the city itself, but started an expansion of Mexican communities in nearby suburbs like Aurora, Joliet, Gary, and Blue Island, and also led to newer populations sprouting in Arlington Heights, Berwyn, and Bensonville. This itself shows us how Mexican expansion is still ongoing and that Mexican culture itself is growing with it. Coming from Aurora ourselves, we can see how this big Mexican community has grown. We see the effects it has on our community in the Mexican stores, Mexican restaurants, and the people themselves. This is the community we grow up in, and we wouldn't change it for the world.
Many of us are talented, no matter your ethnicity. We all have that one special talent. A popular talent is art. Art brings us together to create beautiful and amazing creations. There is one museum that displays Mexican art. That is the Mexican Fine Arts Center Museum in Chicago. Jose Gamaliel Gonzalez is a famous artist that made wonderful art pieces. He was born in Mexico and later studied at the Art Institute of Chicago. He participated in two groups, El Movimiento Artístico Chicano in the 1970s and Mi Raza Arts Consortium in the 1980s. He's a very talented man. The fact that many people, families, friends go and take a look and then spread what they saw among others is amazing. It shows that Mexican art is making an impact in Chicago. Some of the artists could be immigrants and you won't ever notice, which is why Mexican immigrants are good people just like everyone else. There's also the performing arts. For example, the Ballet Folclórico Coatzacoalcos is led by Juan Manuel Cruz, who was started because he wanted to keep that important Mexican aspect, the folkloric dance. They have done many performances throughout Illinois and even out of state. They have done performances in Chicago also, like in Fiestas Patrias, El Grito on September 15, and in the 37th anniversary of Peace Day in Chicago on September 18. These are just a few examples of the Mexican art, which give a glimpse into the Mexican culture. There is a lot of Mexican students attending schools in Chicago and areas near Chicago. A major obstacle to all Mexican immigrant students, or even students with Mexican immigrant parents, is that once they finish high school, they struggle with attending a college or university. Some of the reasons to why students don't advance in their education is not having the money, not having the necessary requirements, or not having the application process completed, and sometimes legally not being able to study. The one thing students like this rely on is the DREAM Act. The DREAM Act allows them to continue their education without fear and to obtain their dream career to become more successful. According to Miguel Sevilla, who's a DREAM Act student at a school in Chicago, he says you have to go to college or university for 2 years, or go to the military and keep renewing it every 2 years. This allows them to continue their study just in 2-year cycles. With the help of the DREAM Act, it allows them to obtain more opportunities for scholarship.
We all strive to become successful. It just takes some of us a harder time getting there. With all the culture that many Mexican immigrants had to leave when coming to the U.S., we see it all being brought back here. With them exploring a new land and a new way of living where they faced many problems and backlash from people, they found a way to overcome everything and even demand rights they knew that they deserved. Without Mexican immigrants encountering Chicago, the city would have never been like it is today. We would not see how Mexican people and culture spread throughout with music, rights, and government, and all of their wonderful culture. And just how the city of Chicago was found on immigrants continue to help this city grow and